People thought that in 2187 humans were still the newcomers to the galaxy. They were too young, too reckless, and too emotional. But when the very predators who had trained an alien war beast to kill left it to die on a battlefield, it wasn't an alien scientist or a galactic veterinarian who stepped up. He was a human field medic with only a first aid kit, a stubborn heart, and a determination not to let anything die on his watch. What happened next didn't just save one animal's life. It made everyone in the galaxy rethink everything they thought they knew about the primitive species from Earth. This is the story of Sergeant Ryan Cole and the monster that the galaxy had given up on. When Sergeant Ryan Cole pulled himself out of the blown-up trench, the ground was still smoking. His left arm was wrapped in a makeshift bandage that was already soaked with blood, and his ears were ringing from the last mortar blast. The battlefield of Karath Prime looked like a nightmare painted in ash and fire all around him. There were broken cars all over the rocky ground. Some people. An alien. Everything is gone. Ryan was a field medic with the 9th Human Expeditionary Unit, which was made up of about 200 soldiers who were sent to this faraway planet as part of a joint military operation with the Dravari Dominion. The Dravari were one of the most feared warrior races in the galaxy. It was tall, muscular, covered in thick dark green scales, and had 4 arms, each with a sharp claw at the end. For almost 100 years, they had been fighting a territorial war against the Scorn Collective. Just 3 years earlier they had signed a treaty that brought humanity into the war. Ryan didn't want to be here. No one in the 9th had. There were sharp rocks and poisonous dust storms on Karath Prime, which made it a barren wasteland. The air tasted like sulfur and burnt metal, and the temperature changed a lot, going from very hot during the day to very cold at night. But Ryan had a job to do and orders were orders. Keep his people safe. A huge Scorn attack force had hit their forward operating base without warning 6 hours before the battle started. The fighting was brutal and disorganized, with both human and Dravari forces trying to hold their ground against wave after wave of Scorn soldiers. Ryan had spent those 6 hours crawling through mud and debris, fixing up injured soldiers, pulling shrapnel from screaming Marines, and doing everything he could with the few supplies he had and no help. The fighting was finally over. The Scorn had pulled back, leaving behind a graveyard of their own dead as well as the dead from both human and Dravari units. Captain Maria Santos, Ryan's boss, was in charge of the cleanup from what was left of the command tent. Her voice crackled in his ear with the calm authority that had kept their unit together through 3 deployments. "Cole, give me a status update. How many people are still hurt?" Ryan looked over the battlefield with tired eyes. He had already treated 14 soldiers in the last hour, but the field was big and hard to see because there was still a lot of dust and smoke in the air. "Still looking, Captain. I'm now in Sector 4. I want to do one more sweep, even though most of the people who were hurt badly have been evacuated." "Got it. Cole, be careful out there. There could still be Scorn scouts around." Ryan moved on, adjusting the medical pack on his shoulders. As he walked over debris and around craters left by plasma blasts, the rocks under his boots crunched. He could smell ozone and burning fuel, which was a smell he had gotten used to over the past 2 years of deployment. He was about to head back to base when he heard it. A sound that made him stop in his tracks. It was a low, guttural moan that sounded like something huge was in a lot of pain. The noise came from a rock formation that had fallen down about 200 yards to his east, close to where the Dravari had been stationed before the battle had taken over. Ryan's first thought was to call it in and wait for help. But the sound came back, this time weaker, and the desperation in that cry made every instinct he had as a medic pull at him. The thing that was making that noise was dying, and it was dying alone. He turned on his radio. "Captain, I hear something in the east Sector 4. It sounds like a big hurt animal is close to the old Dravari position." "I'm going to check it out." "No, Cole. Wait for security to come with you." "With all due respect, Captain, it sounds like whatever it is won't last long enough for an escort to get there." "I'll be careful." There was a pause on the radio and then a sigh of resignation. "5 minutes, Cole. Whether you like it or not, I'm sending someone after you." Ryan moved quickly but carefully toward the rocks that had fallen. The moaning got louder as he got closer, and he could hear something else underneath it. A wet, labored breath that told his trained ear that whatever was making this sound had serious injuries inside. He climbed over a pile of broken stone and stopped at the edge of a small clearing that had formed when the building fell. What he saw made it hard for him to breathe. Ryan had never seen a living thing this big before. It was lying in a pool of dark blue blood. It was as big as a pickup truck and had 8 strong legs and a thick, armored hide covered in overlapping plates of bone-like material. It looked like a huge wolf. It had a huge head with a wide jaw full of teeth that looked like hunting knives. Its 4 eyes glowed a faint red color. From its head, 2 huge curved horns swept back. Its tail was thick and muscular, and at the end of it were a bunch of sharp bone spikes. But even though it looked scary, the creature was clearly in bad shape. 3 of its 8 legs were bent at strange angles, which meant they were definitely broken. A huge cut ran along its left side, showing muscle and what looked like ribs made of dark metal-like material. There was something that looked like a spear or a big piece of shrapnel stuck deep in its stomach, and the blue blood was gathering under it very quickly. Ryan knew what the creature was from the briefings he had before he left. The Dravari used Voriths, which were legendary war beasts, in battle. These animals were bred and trained from birth to be living weapons on the battlefield. Each one was linked to a certain Dravari handler and was said to be very loyal to its master. People all over the galaxy knew them as some of the most dangerous animals that ever lived. But this one was going to die. And there were no Dravari handlers around. Ryan stood at the edge of the clearing for a long time, his mind racing with ideas. The Voritha's 4 red eyes were open but glazed with pain, and it was breathing in short, wet gasps that sent small sprays of blue blood from its nose. Its huge body would shake with pain every few seconds, and a horrible moaning sound would come from deep in its chest. His radio made a crackling sound. "Ryan, what did you find out there?" Ryan swallowed hard. "Captain, I have a hurt Dravari war beast out here. A Vorith, it's not in good shape. Several broken bones, a deep wound in the stomach with shrapnel inside, and a lot of blood loss." Captain Santos took a long time to answer. "Is this a Vorith?" "Cole, those things are weapons of death. Don't go near it. I say again, do not approach. It's dying, Captain. It can hardly lift its head." "That doesn't matter. A Vorith can kill a person faster than you can blink even if it is hurt. Stay back and I'll call the Dravari command to come get their animal." Ryan knew she was right to be scared. They had shown him videos of Voriths fighting during their briefings, and the images still haunted him. A single Vorith could rip through a group of armored soldiers in seconds, using its huge jaws, bone-spiked tail, and raw power to destroy anything in its way. They were the Dravari's most valuable military asset, worth more than a whole fleet of warships. But Ryan couldn't connect the combat videos he had seen with what he was seeing now as the creature fought to breathe. This wasn't a machine that killed. This was a living thing that was in pain, alone, and left on a battlefield by the people who were supposed to take care of it. He waited 20 minutes for the Dravari command to get back to him. When it finally came through to Captain Santos, it wasn't what he thought it would be. The Dravari say that the Vorith is called Unit Croth 7 Cole. During the battle, the person who was in charge of it died, and according to their rules, a Vorith that loses its handler is no longer safe. They're not coming for it. What do you mean when you say they're not coming for it? Ryan asked, his voice full of disbelief. They said exactly that a Vorith without a handler is mentally unstable and can't be rebonded. They usually let it die on its own or kill it from a distance using its neural control implant. But it seems that the implant was broken during the fight, so they can't turn on the kill switch. Ryan felt a wave of anger rise in his chest. So they're going to let it bleed out here in the dirt? After it fought for them? That's how they do things, Cole. The Dravari don't think of their war beasts the same way we do. They think a Vorith without a handler is just a broken weapon. Ryan turned around and looked at the Vorith. One of its 4 eyes was now focused on him, watching his every move with a vague sense that the creature was still alive despite its injuries. There was something in that look. Not aggression, not the urge to kill that he had been warned about. It was much more human than he would have thought an alien war beast would be. It was fear. Fear of dying alone that is pure and desperate. "Captain, I want to help it." "Not at all, Cole. That's a direct command. Don't go near that animal." Captain, I'm a medic in the field. I promised to protect life. This creature is alive and in pain, and its own people have left it. I can at least try to make it stable. Sergeant, your oath was to protect human life. That thing is a weapon made to kill. You'll be dead before you can scream if it thinks you're a threat. Ryan knew she was right. There was danger everywhere in this situation. But he also knew something else that he couldn't explain in a logical way. The Vorith was looking at him in a way that made it stop moaning when he spoke, as if the sound of his voice was somehow calming. This thing wasn't just a mindless weapon, it was something else. Those red eyes were smart and they were asking for help. Captain, I'm going in. It's my fault if something goes wrong. Hey Cole. Captain Santos' voice was sharp with anger, but Ryan had already turned down the volume on his earpiece. He took a deep breath, put his rifle down on a rock where he could see it but not get to it quickly, and slowly walked over to the hurt Vorith. Ryan could see the creature's muscles tense up under its armored hide as it turned its huge head to follow him. The Vorith was clearly judging him even though it was hurt. It was trying to figure out if he was a threat. Ryan kept his hands in plain sight, moved slowly and carefully, and started to speak in a calm, low voice. Easy there, big guy. I know you're in pain. I can tell you're scared. But I don't want to hurt you. All I want to do is help. The Vorith's upper lip pulled back a little, showing off its huge teeth, and a low growl came from deep inside its chest. Ryan's heart raced against his ribs, but he kept walking. He had seen the same warning signs in hurt dogs on Earth. Fear, aggression. The creature wasn't threatening him because it wanted to fight. It was threatening him because it was scared. I know, friend. A big, scary person is walking toward you. But look. Ryan raised his hands to show that they were empty. No guns. Just these hands, and they can fix things that are broken pretty well. He stopped about 15 feet from the Vorith, which was close enough for him to see all of its wounds but far enough away that he could react if the creature lunged. The growling had stopped a little and now there was that awful heavy breathing. Ryan could see that the wound on its side was worse than it looked from a distance. Through the cut, he could see the creature's internal organs, which were beating slowly and getting weaker. That a piece of scorn weaponry was stuck in its stomach. A serrated blade about 2 feet long that had gone deep into the creature's gut. Ryan knew from experience that taking it out without the right preparation could cause deadly bleeding. Ryan slowly lowered himself to the ground and sat cross-legged in the dirt about 10 feet from the Vorith. He opened his medical bag and started to spread out his supplies so the creature could see them. Bandages, antiseptics, surgical tools, painkillers, and things that help blood clot. Ryan knew a long time ago that the basics of emergency medicine were surprisingly universal. This was a field medic's kit for human soldiers, not alien war beasts. Okay, here's the deal, he said in a friendly tone, as if he were talking to a sick person in a hospital bed. You have 3 broken legs, a nasty wound on your side, and a big piece of metal stuck in your stomach. If we don't do something about it, any one of those things could kill you. Trust me, I'm going to try to help. The Vorith looked at him with all 4 of its red eyes. Neither of them moved for a long, tense moment. Then slowly the creature dropped its huge head to the ground and let out a long, shuddering breath. It wasn't exactly giving in. It felt more like giving up. The Vorith seemed to have made up its mind that this strange, small creature in front of it was either going to help or not, but fighting was no longer an option. Ryan saw that as a sign that he could go ahead. Ryan's top priority was to stop the bleeding. The Vorith's wound was bleeding steadily, and even a creature this big couldn't afford to keep losing blood at this rate. He crawled forward on his hands and knees, moving slowly enough that the Vorith could see every move he made without feeling scared. When he got to the creature's side, he was amazed by how big it was. When you got close to the Vorith, its armored hide felt like touching warm stone. Each plate was about the size of his palm and very thick. The skin between the plates was softer and had short, coarse fur that was dark gray with patterns that might have helped these animals blend in with their surroundings. Okay, big guy, this is going to hurt a little, Ryan said quietly as he took out his biggest tube of coagulant gel. It was made to heal wounds in people, but the basic chemistry should work on any living thing that is made of carbon. He had hoped that he put the gel on the edges of the huge cut and watched as it fizzed and bubbled against the strange tissue. The Vorith flinched at the feeling, which made its whole body shake and almost knocked Ryan off balance. But it didn't bite him. Not even a growl. It only turned one of its 4 eyes to watch what he was doing with a focus that felt almost medical. The gel was doing its job. Not perfectly, but well enough to stop the bleeding a lot. Ryan used almost all of his coagulant on this one wound. He packed the gel deep into the cut and then covered it with the biggest bandages he had. He was trying to fix something that was broken, but it was the best he could do with what he had. The shrapnel in the stomach was a whole other issue. Ryan could tell that the serrated blade had gone deep into the creature's gut, probably piercing at least one of its internal organs. Taking it out in the field would be very dangerous. If the blade had cut a big blood vessel, pulling it out could have made the Vorith bleed out in a few minutes. Ryan said to the creature, "I can't take this out here," as if it could understand him. "We need to take you to a place with the right tools and lighting. But first, let me check out those legs." That he carefully walked around the Vorith's body, looking at each of the 3 broken legs. 2 of them had clean breaks, which means the bone broke but didn't shatter. The third was a compound fracture with a piece of dark metal bone sticking out of the armored hide. Ryan used things from his kit and pieces of trash he found nearby to splint the 2 clean breaks. He could only clean and wrap the compound fracture, putting antibiotics and painkillers around the exposed bone. The Vorith stayed very still the whole time, which took almost an hour. It flinched when Ryan touched hurtful spots, and once it let out a sharp yelp when he accidentally moved the broken bone, but it never tried to bite or scratch him. Actually, as the pain medicine started to work, the creature seemed to calm down a little. Its breathing became less frantic, and its huge body relaxed from the stiff position it had been in because of the pain. Ryan's radio had been buzzing with more and more urgent messages from Captain Santos, but he had kept the volume low while he worked. He turned it back up now that the immediate life-threatening problems had calmed down a bit. "Ryan. Cole. Answer me right now, or I'll send a full squad with orders to shoot." "I'm here, Captain. I'm okay." The Vorith hasn't been aggressive at all. I've been able to stop the worst of the bleeding and put a splint on 3 broken legs. There was a moment of shocked silence. "You're kidding." "No, ma'am. This animal is going along with the treatment. Captain, it's smart. A lot smarter than what the briefing said. I believe it gets that I'm trying to help." "Cole, even if that's true, what are you going to do about it? We don't have the space to treat a creature that big, and the Dravari won't help." Ryan had been thinking about that very problem while he worked. The station's medical bay was meant for people, but they could use the cargo hold as a temporary treatment area. The hardest part would be getting the Vorith there. "I need a vehicle to move things. Something that can hold about 3 tons of hurt aliens. And I need you to make Cargo Bay 4 available for use as a medical station. You want to bring that thing into our base." "Captain, it will die if I leave it here. The field treatment I've done bought it some time, but it needs surgery to get rid of the shrapnel and fix the compound fracture. There may also be internal injuries that my portable scanner can't find." Another long break. Ryan could almost hear Captain Santos weighing her options against her conscience. She was a tough leader, but she was also a good person who joined the military to save lives, not to watch them end for no reason. "I'll send a big truck. But Cole, if that thing hurts anyone, it's your fault." "Got it, Captain." Thanks. It took another 45 minutes and the help of 6 very nervous soldiers to get the Vorith on the transport. They had to make a makeshift sled out of cargo netting and drag the creature onto the flatbed of the vehicle because it couldn't walk on 3 broken legs. The Vorith stayed calm the whole time, but its 4 red eyes watched everyone with the same intense, calculating look. The first person to notice something strange while they were getting the creature ready for transport was Private First Class Tommy Brooks, who was only 19 years old. "Hey Sarge, look at its eyes. They always follow you when you talk. It knows that you're the one who's helping it." Ryan had seen the same thing but didn't want to think too much about it. There was no denying that a bond seemed to be forming between him and the huge war beast, though. Ryan put his hand on the Vorith's armored head as they drove back to base, which was bumpy. The creature closed all 4 of its eyes and let out a low rumble that shook Ryan's whole arm. It wasn't a growl. It was more like a purr than anything else. Ryan whispered, "Hang in there, buddy. We're going to work this out." The most unusual operating room in human military history had been quickly set up in Cargo Bay 4. Ryan had to call in every favor he was owed and a few he wasn't to get the tools he needed. Cables that weren't very strong held up portable surgical lights from the ceiling. Ryan had changed the sensors on the medical monitors that beeped and hummed along one wall so that they could read the Voritha's alien biology. They made a table big enough for the creature out of cargo containers that had been welded together. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, the unit's main doctor, had come an hour earlier and was now standing in the doorway of the cargo bay. Her face showed a mix of professional interest and deep worry. Sarah had been a surgeon for 15 years, 5 of which were spent working on military posts in the frontier. She had done surgery on people in every kind of situation, but this was something completely different. "You want me to help you do surgery on a 3-ton alien predator," she said with no emotion. "Using tools made for people based on scans we can barely understand with no plan B and no examples to follow." Ryan said, "That about sums it up," without looking up from the scanner readings he was looking at. He had been running every test he could think of on the Voritha's biology for the past 2 hours. He had built an incomplete but better picture of its internal anatomy. "Ryan, I admire what you did on the field. It took a lot of bravery to stabilize this creature. But surgery is a whole other story. We don't know how its body reacts to anesthesia. We don't know what kind of blood it has or how to replace what it's lost. We don't even know where all of its organs are." Ryan finally looked up and met her gaze. "Sarah, the scans have helped me figure out about 70% of its internal structure. In many ways its biology is like that of mammals on Earth. Carbon-based, similar organ functions and a nervous system that works in the same way. The main differences are the 8-limb skeleton, the metallic bones, and the fact that it has 2 circulatory systems that use a copper-based blood analog." "Copper-based blood," Sarah said again. "That's why it is blue." "That's right. Like how horseshoe crabs work on Earth, but in a much more complicated way. The 2 circulatory systems are actually good for us because if one breaks, the other can take over for a short time." Sarah walked deeper into the cargo bay and saw the Vorith lying on the temporary operating table. The creature was awake, and its 4 red eyes were watching both people with an unsettling level of intelligence. It was clear that the pain medicine Ryan had given the creature was wearing off, and its breathing was getting harder again. Sarah asked in a low voice, "How long does it have without surgery?" "Maybe 6 hours based on the internal scans. The shrapnel has pierced its second stomach and is pushing against what I think is its main liver. The whole system stops working if that organ fails." Sarah looked at the Vorith for a long time before closing her eyes and taking a deep breath. "Tell me about your plan for the surgery." Ryan felt a rush of relief and thankfulness. He opened the scan results on the biggest screen and started to explain how he would go about it. The first thing to do was get the shrapnel out of the stomach. According to his scans, the serrated blade had entered at an angle, going through the abdominal wall and into the secondary digestive organ before getting stuck against the liver. To get it out, you would have to cut away some of the armored hide around the entry point to make enough room to pull the blade out without hurting it anymore. Ryan said, "The biggest risk is bleeding. The blade is close to what looks like a big blood vessel. We need to clamp it right away if we nick it while taking it out." "What are you going to use for anesthesia?" Sarah asked. "I've been working on a new formula based on how his nervous system reacts to the pain medicine I gave him in the field. His brain chemistry uses the same neurotransmitters as those of Earth mammals, but in different amounts. I think a modified ketamine cocktail with 4 times the normal dose for each body weight should work." "You think?" Sarah made clear. "It's the best I can do. This is new ground for us." Tommy Brooks and 2 other soldiers stood guard outside the cargo bay while they got ready for surgery for the next hour. Ryan had seen that the Vorith got upset when there were too many people in the room, but it stayed calm as long as Ryan was there and talking to it. Ryan knelt next to the Voritha's huge head and stared into its 4 red eyes before starting. "Okay friend, we're going to make you sleep for a while. You're going to feel a lot better when you wake up. I promise." The creature made that low rumbling sound again, which Ryan had come to see as a sign of trust. He gave the creature the anesthetic through an 4-line he had made himself and put into a vein between its armored plates. It took almost 10 minutes for the Voritha's eyes to close and its huge body to relax completely, which was longer than he would have liked. Ryan said, "He's under," as he looked at the monitors to check his vital signs. Heart rate steady, both circulatory systems working. Brain activity that is normal for being deeply unconscious. "Okay, let's get to work," Sarah said as she put on her surgical gloves. Ryan started the surgery by carefully cutting around the place where the shrapnel had entered. The Voritha's armored skin was so tough that it took a plasma scalpel on its highest setting to cut through. The tissue under the armor was thick and muscular, and Ryan had to be careful not to get lost in the complicated network of blood vessels. "There it is," Sarah said when she saw the embedded blade on the surgical camera feed. "It's deeper than the scans showed. And check out the pattern of the serration. It was made to do the most damage inside." Ryan could see that the blade had not only gone through the secondary stomach, but it had also made a few smaller tears in the tissue around it. The damage was bad, and fixing it would require him to do very careful work on organs he had never worked on before. They spent 3 hours just getting rid of the shrapnel. Ryan did the main extraction, while Sarah took care of the bleeding and kept an eye on the vital signs. The most dangerous time was when the blade finally came free and a stream of blue blood shot out of the wound. "Clamp. Now!" Ryan yelled. Sarah moved with practiced precision, clamping the damaged vessel while Ryan packed the wound with coagulant and began suturing the torn tissue. The Voritha's vital signs dropped to a very dangerous level for about 90 seconds before stabilizing as the bleeding was brought under control. "That was close," Sarah said softly as she looked at the monitors. Ryan agreed, "Too close. But we've made it through the worst part. Let's fix the damage to the organ now." For the next 4 hours they carefully fixed the internal injuries. Ryan came up with new ways to do things on the spot, using human surgical methods on alien bodies in ways that no medical book could have prepared him for. The Voritha's tissue reacted surprisingly well to human suturing methods, and once the major vessels were fixed, the copper-based blood showed that it could clot naturally very well. By the 8th hour, they were ready to set the Voritha's leg's compound fracture correctly. Ryan used surgical-grade titanium rods from the station's supply cabinet to make a temporary internal splint. The metallic bone was harder to work with than human bone. It wasn't pretty, but it would work. Ryan's legs were shaking and his vision was blurry when he finally got up from the table after 10 hours. Sarah looked just as tired, but there was a quiet happiness in her eyes that matched Ryan's. She said, "Vitals are strong. Both circulatory systems are working fine. The brain is working normally. Ryan, I think your crazy plan really did work." Ryan leaned against the wall and slid down to the floor. He was too tired to stand up anymore. He mumbled, "Wake me up when he opens his eyes," and was asleep in a matter of seconds. Ryan woke up to the feeling of something warm and wet on his face. When he opened his eyes, he saw 4 glowing red eyes just inches from his own. For one terrifying second, all he could see were those huge teeth, each one as long as his finger, and a jaw that could easily crush his head. Then the Vorith licked him again, a big warm sweep of a tongue that was as big as a bath towel. The deep rumbling purr shook the floor of the cargo bay. Ryan said, "Good morning to you too," as he wiped alien spit off his face. He looked at the monitors and was shocked by what he saw. The Voritha's healing rate had gone up a lot in the 5 hours he had been asleep. The surgical wounds were already starting to heal very quickly, much faster than he had ever seen in human patients. Dr. Sarah Mitchell walked in with 2 cups of coffee. She stopped in her tracks when she saw the Voritha's huge head resting almost gently on Ryan's chest. "Well, I see that your patient is awake and seems very thankful. His healing rate is amazing," Ryan said as he carefully pulled himself out from under the Voritha's head. The creature whined softly when it lost contact, but it didn't fight back. "Check out the place where the surgery was done. It heals at least 10 times faster than human skin." Sarah looked at the monitors and gave a slow nod. "I've been learning more about Vorith biology from what the Dravari have shared with the Galactic database. It looks like they have a very advanced way to heal themselves, but it only works when the creature is calm and safe. When they are in combat or under stress, their bodies put other functions first." That made sense of why the Voritha's wounds weren't healing on the battlefield. The stress of battle, the pain, and the fear of being left behind had all kept its natural healing powers from working. Now that it was in a safe place and its pain was under control, its body was doing what it had evolved to do. The change over the next 3 days was amazing. Ryan had started calling the Vorith Rex. At first it could barely lift its head, but now it could stand on all 8 legs. The titanium splint was helping the compound fracture heal, and the internal wounds from the shrapnel had almost completely closed. Rex's appetite came back with a vengeance, and Ryan had to talk to the kitchen staff to make sure they had enough food for a creature that could eat 50 pounds of protein in one meal. But the biggest change was in how people acted. Rex followed Ryan around the base, padding through the halls on legs that got stronger every day. The soldiers who had been scared of the huge predators started to get used to it, especially after they saw how kind it was to Ryan. Tommy Brooks was the second person Rex let touch him. The young private spent hours sitting next to the creature, talking to it, and scratching the soft spots between its armored plates. As they watched Rex get better, Sarah told Ryan one night, "I looked up more about the Dravari handler bond. Based on what they have written down, a Vorith forms a neural bond with its handler while it is being trained. People say that this deep connection links their feelings and goals. The Dravari use a technological implant to start and control the bond." "But Rex's implant was broken," Ryan said. "That's right. So whatever bond is forming between you and Rex isn't based on technology. It's normal. And based on the little research that has been done, there has never been any evidence of a natural bond between a Vorith and another species." Ryan looked at Rex, who was lying on his side in the cargo bay with all 8 legs stretched out in a way that made him look like a dog sleeping comfortably. One of his 4 eyes was open, and it was looking at Ryan like a loyal pet looks at its owner. Ryan said softly, "He chose me. When I came to help him when everyone else had given up, he chose to trust me. And that trust grew into something more. Something the Dravari would probably say is impossible," Sarah said. "Technological control is the basis of their whole system. They don't believe that a Vorith could form a real emotional bond without an implant. 4 days after the surgery, Commander Krall of the Dravari Dominion forces came to the human base and broke the peace. He brought 12 fully armed Dravari warriors with him and asked to meet with Captain Santos right away. Ryan and Sarah were called to the command tent, but Rex stayed in the cargo bay with Tommy watching over him. Even for Dravari, Commander Krall was a scary person. He was almost 8 feet tall, had scales that were so dark they looked black, and scars all over his 4 muscular arms. He spoke English with a rough accent that made it sound like every word was a threat. "One of our war beasts is with you," Krall said without any introduction. "This goes against the agreement we made to work together. Human forces are not allowed to take Dravari military assets." "We didn't take anything," Captain Santos said in a calm voice. "Your troops left a wounded Vorith on the battlefield. Our medic found it dying and gave it medical care." Krall growled, "The Vorith was meant to die. It lost its owner. It should have been allowed to die according to our law. You weren't allowed to get involved." Ryan couldn't keep quiet. "Your law says you should let a smart animal bleed to death because its owner was killed? What kind of law is this?" Krall looked at Ryan with dark eyes and a look that made the room feel like it was getting colder. "You are the doctor. The person who touched the Vorith." "I did more than just touch it. I saved it. 3 broken legs, shrapnel in its stomach, and a lot of blood loss. Rex will be fine after 10 hours of surgery." "Rex," Krall said again with contempt. "You gave it a name. Like a pet." He moved closer to Ryan, using his huge height to tower over the human medic. "You don't know anything about the Vorith. They are weapons that were made for war. That creature will eventually attack you if it doesn't have an implant to control its aggression. It will kill you and everyone else on this base. With all due respect, Commander, I've been with this creature every day for the past week. It hasn't been aggressive toward anyone at all. In fact, it has been calm and helpful the whole time it has been getting better. Because it is hurt, it is weaker," Krall said. "When it gets back to full strength, its instincts to hunt will kick in. The handler implant exists because Voriths are killing machines that can't be controlled without it." Ryan said in a calm but firm voice, "Or maybe the implant exists because you never tried to talk to them in any other way." Everyone in the room stopped talking. Commander Krall looked at Ryan with a look that changed from angry to what might have been disbelief. In Dravari culture, it was a big insult to question a superior officer's knowledge directly. Ryan wasn't Dravari though, and he wasn't going to let cultural differences stop him from standing up for Rex. The standoff with Commander Krall lasted 3 tense days. The Dravari commander had made a formal complaint to the Joint Military Command, asking for the immediate return of military property, and threatening to end the alliance between humans and Dravari if his demands weren't met. Captain Santos was able to handle the political situation well by putting things off and negotiating while Ryan took care of Rex. Rex's recovery sped up even more over those 3 days. The compound fracture had healed enough that Rex could put weight on all 8 legs, and the internal wounds had completely closed. Sarah did a full diagnostic scan and said that the Vorith was in very good health, with all of its organs working normally and no signs of infection or other problems. But Rex's behavior was the most surprising change. The creature was much smarter than anything the Dravari had written about. Rex could understand and follow at least 40 different verbal commands from Ryan. This wasn't because he had been taught to do so, but because he had apparently learned them by watching and being in the right place at the right time. He could open doors by pushing buttons with his nose. He knew each person and greeted them in a different way. Tommy Brooks got excited when people licked his face. Someone gently nudged Sarah's head. When Captain Santos came by, which wasn't very often, people would nod their heads in respect, almost like a bow. "This is amazing," Sarah said as she looked over her behavioral notes. "The Dravari literature says that Voriths are as smart as a smart dog. What we're seeing is more like the intelligence of a great ape or maybe even higher." Ryan suggested, maybe the implant was stopping his natural intelligence. It would make sense to limit the Vorith's ability to think for themselves if the Dravari control system was meant to make them follow orders without question. That's exactly what I think. Rex's natural cognitive abilities are fully showing themselves for the first time now that the implant is broken and no longer works. On the 4th day, Commander Krall gave an ultimatum in the morning. The Vorith had to be back in Dravari custody by sunset, or the alliance would end. The Dravari got the support of the Joint Military Command, which told Captain Santos to do what they said. Ryan had until 6 p.m. to say goodbye. Ryan sat in the cargo bay with Rex all morning, leaning against the creature's warm, armored side. Ryan had Rex's huge head in his lap, and the 4 red eyes were looking up at him with a look that was way too human for comfort. Ryan whispered, "I'm not going to let them take you back. I just need to figure out how." The answer came from a place I didn't expect. Tommy Brooks, who had been looking up Dravari law on the station's database, burst into the cargo bay with his tablet in hand. "Hey Sarge, I found something. The right of challenge is an old Dravari custom. If someone outside the Handler's clan says they have a bond with a Vorith and can prove it, the creature is theirs. How do you show the bond? That's the point. A trial of command is the standard test. The challenger has to show that they are in full control of the Vorith by doing a series of tasks, some of which are combat situations. The bond is real if the Vorith does what the handler says without the implant." Ryan looked at Rex, who had raised his head because the energy in the room had changed. "A trial by combat. They want me to put Rex in a fight and show that he listens to what I say without any help from technology." "That's right. And this is the most important part. The Dravari have to accept the challenge. It's in their oldest laws, which were made before they even had the technology to make implants." Ryan stood up, his mind racing. If you use the right of challenge, Commander Krall has to agree. It was a dangerous thing to do. The Dravari would have every right to kill Rex if he didn't follow orders during a fight or if his natural predatory instincts took over. But if it worked, and Ryan could show that a real connection could take the place of the implant's technological control, then Rex would be his. Forever. "Tommy, tell Captain Santos I need to talk to Commander Krall. Tell her I'm using the right of challenge." Ryan stood in the base's combat training arena across from Commander Krall and his squad of Dravari warriors 2 hours later. Captain Santos stood to the side with Sarah and a dozen other human soldiers. They all had looks on their faces that ranged from hope to fear. Rex stood next to Ryan, fully healed and looking like the scary predator he was made to be. His armored skin shone in the arena lights, and his 4 red eyes scanned the crowd with an alertness that made even the tough Dravari feel uneasy. Commander Krall said, "You are invoking an ancient right that humans have no claim to." Ryan could tell that the commander was a little worried that Rex was standing calmly next to a human without any visible restraints. "The trial of command is a tradition among the Dravari," Ryan said. "Your own laws say that any sentient being can use the right." "I've read the laws. There are no limits on species." Krall looked at Ryan for a long time before pointing to one of his warriors. "That's fine. There will be 3 tests during the trial: protection, restraint, and obedience. If you fail any of them, the Vorith will end right away." The first test was to follow orders. Commander Krall yelled a bunch of orders in Dravari. Every bonded Vorith should know these basic military orders. Sit down. Get up. Go to the left. Go to the right. Turn. Stop. Rex didn't answer any of them. He just stood next to Ryan and didn't pay any attention to the Dravari commander. Krall said, "The creature is broken. It doesn't respond to anything." "It answers me," Ryan said in a calm voice. He spoke English and looked at Rex. "Rex, sit down." The huge war beast quickly dropped its back end to the ground, sitting like a giant dog with 8 legs. The Dravari observers were surprised and whispered to each other. "Stand up," Rex said. "Go to the left wall." Rex walked over to the left wall of the arena without making a sound. "Come back." Rex went back to Ryan's side. Ryan went through a dozen more commands and each one was harder than the last. Rex answered every single one right away, and his 4 eyes were completely focused on Ryan with trust. The Dravari side got quieter with each command that worked. The second test was self-control. The arena was filled with a live Koroth rock lizard, which is about the size of a goat and was known to be hunted by Voriths. The lizard ran across the floor, its claws clicking on the metal. Rex's head snapped toward the prey animal right away, and every muscle in his body tensed up with the instinct to hunt. His lips pulled back from those big teeth, and a low growl started to build in his chest. Ryan said firmly, "Rex. No. Let it go." The Vorith's body stayed tense for a few seconds. Ryan could see the fight inside him happening right in front of him. Rex's body was telling him to chase, catch and kill with every fiber of his being. But the bond with Ryan, the trust that had grown over days of care and healing, was stronger than instinct. Rex calmed down. He closed his mouth, turned away from the animal he was hunting, and sat down next to Ryan. The rock lizard ran to a corner of the arena and was not hurt at all. The look on Commander Krall's face changed from disgust to something more like shock. He had worked with Voriths for a long time, but he had never seen one ignore its hunting instinct without the handler implant's electronic suppression. What Ryan just did should not have been possible. The third test was for safety. Ryan's stomach tightened as Commander Krall went over the rules. This was the most dangerous part of the trial. Ryan would be attacked in a fake way. Rex had to keep him safe, but he could only stop the threat without killing it. Aggression that is under control. It was the hardest thing to teach any predatory animal, and it was the test that most often failed. 3 Dravari warriors came into the arena in heavy armor for battle. They had shock staffs, which were weapons that would shock you with painful but not deadly electric charges. They were going to attack Ryan at the same time, and Rex had to stop them. Ryan knelt down to look into those 4 red eyes and said, "Rex, some people are going to try to hurt me. Please keep me safe but don't hurt anyone. Stop them but don't kill them. Do you get it?" Rex's eyes were so focused on Ryan's face that it felt like they were reading his mind. Then the creature huffed once, a short breath that Ryan had learned to recognize as a sign of agreement. The 3 warriors from Dravari ran at them. What happened next was a show of controlled power that left everyone in the arena speechless. Rex moved so quickly that it seemed impossible for a creature of his size. He stopped the first warrior with a shoulder check that sent the armored alien sliding across the floor. He tripped the second warrior with a sweep of his strong tail, using just the right amount of force to knock the Dravari off his feet without hurting him. Rex pinned the third warrior, who had gotten closest to Ryan, to the ground with one huge paw on his chest. His huge teeth were only inches from the warrior's face, but Rex didn't bite, didn't scratch. No harm done. He just held the warrior down, and all four of his red eyes sent a clear message. Stay down. Ryan let out a breath he didn't know he had been holding. Let go, Rex. The Vorith quickly got off the warrior and went back to Ryan. His tail wagged once, which was so dog-like that Tommy Brooks, who was watching from the sidelines, laughed. For a long time, Commander Krall stood there without saying a word. The Dravari warriors who had taken part in the test were getting up from the arena floor, looking both embarrassed and amazed. No Vorith had ever done this before. The Dravari breeding program has never seen anything like this. The bond is real, Krall said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. I've never seen anything like this. This creature does everything you say without an implant or any other kind of technology. Not because of fear or conditioning, but because of real loyalty. He saw Ryan in a new way. How? Ryan put his hand on Rex's head, which was covered in armor. I didn't teach him. I didn't have control over him. I helped him when no one else would. And he decided to believe me. Commander Krall's acceptance of the bond was just the start. In the next 2 weeks, word of Ryan's success spread quickly through the Dravari military and then to the rest of the galaxy. A human field medic not only saved a Vorith that the Dravari had given up for dead, but also formed a real emotional bond with one of the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy, all without the technological control that had been thought to be absolutely necessary for thousands of years. The first sign that something bigger was going on was when the Dravari Biological Sciences Division asked Ryan to talk to them. A group of their best researchers wanted to look into the relationship between Ryan and Rex. They were especially curious about how a natural bond could make people just as obedient and cooperative as their technological implants, and in some ways even more so. Almost everything about Dr. Karath Ven, the main researcher, was different from Commander Krall. Krall was a warrior who saw everything through the lens of combat and control. Karath, on the other hand, was a scientist who was genuinely curious and open-minded. She was shorter than most Dravari, had lighter green scales, and her eyes sparkled with intelligence. Karath told Ryan at their first meeting, "We have been studying the Handler-Vorith relationship for more than 3,000 years. Our implant technology has improved over the years to give us full control over how the creature acts. But what you've done makes it seem like our whole approach may have been wrong from the start." Ryan asked, "How so?" in a way that showed he was really interested. "The implant doesn't just tell the Vorith what to do. It makes the creature easier to handle by lowering its higher cognitive functions. We always thought this was necessary because a smart Vorith would be too unpredictable and dangerous. But Rex shows that the opposite is true. He is more responsive, adaptable, and reliable than any implant-controlled Vorith we've ever made because he has full intelligence." The research team was allowed to run tests on Rex for a week with Ryan's permission and under his watchful eye. What they found shocked the Dravari scientific community. Rex's brain activity was more complicated than that of their Voriths, which were controlled by implants. He could figure things out, guess what Ryan needed, and even show what looked like empathy, which the Dravari had never thought was possible in a war beast. "These things are not animals," Karath said during a talk to the Joint Military Command. "They are intelligent beings whose cognitive abilities we have been deliberately suppressing for thousands of years. The human medic's method of gaining trust instead of using force has revealed abilities we didn't know we had." The effects were huge. Over the years, the Dravari had bred and controlled billions of Voriths. Every one of them had an implant that made them less intelligent and forced them to obey by manipulating them electronically. The creatures had never been able to show what they really were. Ryan was very upset by this news. One night, he sat in the cargo bay with Rex and thought about what Karatha's research meant. The creature's huge head was on his legs. He said softly, "They've been making your kind slaves for thousands of years. And they didn't even know what you really were." Rex made a low sound that could have meant yes, or could have been a reaction to the way Ryan sounded. Ryan thought that deep connection between them was full of something that felt a lot like shared grief no matter what, but there were more shocking things to come. Karatha's team found something else that changed everything. Voriths often got mind-eating parasites, but these were not a natural disease. Thousands of years ago, an enemy of the Dravari made them as a biological weapon that was meant to kill the Voriths because they were smart. The parasites were meant to destroy the neural networks that gave Voriths their higher cognitive functions, turning them into mindless beasts that would attack their handlers. Karath told Ryan, "The irony is terrible. The parasites were made to turn smart Voriths into wild animals. We put implants in ourselves to stop that intelligence from getting out. We did what our enemies tried to do with biological warfare on purpose." Ryan added, "And because the implants weaken the immune response that would have fought the parasites naturally, your Voriths had no way to fight the infection." That's right. A Vorith who is healthy, smart, and has a strong natural immune system might be able to fight off the parasites on their own without medical help. But the parasites didn't have any trouble getting through because the implant was blocking brain function. This meant that the Dravari's own technology had made their Voriths more likely to get the disease they were afraid of. And their decision to leave infected Voriths to die only made the cycle worse. The political fallout was huge. The Dravari High Council had the most heated debate in their government in centuries when Karath showed them her results. Traditionalists said that the implant system was necessary to keep dangerous predators under control. Reformers used Rex as an example to show that Voriths could be trusted without having to use technology to keep an eye on them. The argument went beyond government chambers and into the public sphere, with Dravari citizens on both sides of the issue. Surprisingly, Commander Krall became one of the strongest supporters of change. Watching Rex pass the trial of command had shaken his beliefs to their core. He told the High Council, "I have trained and led Voriths for 40 years. I've always thought of them as loyal weapons and nothing more. The person showed me I was wrong, and I'm ashamed that it took someone from outside to see what we should have seen ourselves." Ryan was suddenly at the center of a galactic controversy that he had never wanted to be a part of. Dozens of species asked for interviews. Medical researchers wanted to learn more about how he did surgery. Behavioral scientists wanted to learn more about the natural bond. Politicians wanted to use his story to help their own causes. Rex stayed with him through it all. The huge war beast that had been left to die on the battlefield had become a living example of what could happen when compassion took the place of control. Ryan, the field medic who just wanted to help a dying creature, had accidentally started a revolution in how the galaxy's most feared warrior species treated its strongest allies. Ryan and Rex were stationed at Forward Operating Base Sentinel 6 weeks after the surgery on Karath Prime. The base was bigger than their last one and had better facilities. A growing team of researchers was studying the bond between Vorith and humans. Rex had his own room, which was a big space that had been turned into a vehicle hangar. Ryan had been promoted to Specialist Medical Officer and given the unofficial title of Vorith Liaison. This job didn't exist in any military handbook, but everyone agreed it was needed. At 8:03 a.m., the warning alarms broke the peace and quiet of life that had settled into a comfortable routine. Ryan woke up with a start when he heard explosions and plasma fire. His military training kicked in right away and he was ready to go in less than a minute. Rex was already there, though, with all 8 legs braced in a combat stance and 4 red eyes blazing with alertness. "We're being attacked." The base-wide communication system picked up Captain Santos' voice. "Scorn attack force. There are several points of breach. All hands to battle stations." This raid was not normal. As Ryan and Rex walked down the hallways to the command center, it became clear how big the attack really was. The Scorn had brought a huge army. Hundreds of soldiers with heavy armor and air support. The base's defenses were already failing, and defenders from both the Dravari and the humans were being pushed back on many fronts. When Ryan got to the command center, it was a mess. Captain Santos was in charge of defenses as usual, but the tactical display showed a grim picture. The base was surrounded and help was hours away. "They hit us with some kind of electromagnetic pulse first," Santos said. "It knocked out long-range communications and disabled most of our automated defenses. We're fighting with small arms and anything else the Dravari can throw at them." Ryan asked, "What about the Dravari Voriths?" Santos' face grew darker. "That's the worst part. The EMP ruined the handler implants. All of the Vorith on this base have gone dark. They've gone back to their basic instincts now that the implants aren't controlling them. 3 of them broke free from their cages and are now running around the base. To keep them in, we've had to seal off whole areas." Ryan felt a shiver go down his spine. The Voriths that Commander Krall had always been afraid of were now exactly what he had always feared: implant-controlled. Uncontrolled predators are just as dangerous to the defenders as they are to the attackers. Rex, on the other hand, stood calmly next to Ryan with his 4 eyes scanning the tactical display as if he could read it. This showed that it didn't have to be that way. "Ryan, I need you in the medical bay," Santos said again. "We're getting a lot of casualties quickly." "Captain, let me go with Rex to the eastern wall first. That's where the Scorn are focusing their attack, and our troops there are about to be overwhelmed." Santos looked at Rex and thought for a moment. The huge Vorith looked her in the eye and held her gaze. The intelligent red eyes seemed to make her choice for her. "Do it. But Cole, be careful." Ryan and Rex ran through the base to the eastern defensive wall, where the fighting was the worst. With each step, the sound of plasma fire and explosions got louder. They saw soldiers who had been hurt being carried to the medical bay. Their faces were pale with shock and pain. Ryan wanted to stop and help each one, but he knew that the best way to save lives right now was to help hold the wall. They broke through the eastern access door and into a war zone. The defensive wall had been broken in 2 places, and Scorn soldiers were rushing through the holes. Dravari warriors and human marines were fighting together, but they were outnumbered and losing ground. Ryan could see at least 20 Scorn soldiers nearby, and every minute more were coming through the holes. "Rex," Ryan said firmly. "Keep safe. Only fight enemies. No friends. Go." The Vorith jumped into battle with a roar that shook the walls. Ryan had never seen Rex fight at full strength before, and it was both scary and awe-inspiring. Rex moved through the Scorn like a force of nature. His 8 legs made him faster and more agile than the armored aliens. He bit down on weapons and crushed them. His tail knocked soldiers off their feet. His armored body could take plasma blasts that would have killed a person right away. What really set Rex apart from the Voriths that were running around the base with loose implants was how precise he was. He only attacked Scorn troops. He walked through the human and Dravari defenders without touching them. Rex charged through the enemy formation, scattering them, and then stood guard over the injured Marine until other Marines could pull him to safety. Ryan worked with Rex to help injured soldiers on the front lines while Rex kept the enemy at bay. Ryan's most dangerous and important job was this one. Ryan was always there with his medical kit when a Marine went down, stopping the bleeding, managing the airways, and keeping people alive long enough to be evacuated. Rex was always there, a wall of armored rage between the Scorn and the injured. Every time they got too close, the fight lasted for 4 hours. At one very important point, a Scorn heavy assault vehicle broke through the wall and threatened to break up the whole defensive line. Rex ran straight at the car, and his huge horns hit the armored front with enough force to flip it over. The Scorn crew ran out in a panic, but Dravari warriors who came in behind Rex quickly put them down. But Rex didn't get away from the fight without getting hurt. A concentrated volley of plasma fire hit him on the left side, burning through his armor and into the muscle underneath. Ryan saw Rex stagger and his heart stopped with fear. "Rex, get back!" he yelled. That Ryan's voice made the Vorith turn, and for a terrible moment, Ryan thought he saw the creature's legs give way. But Rex steadied himself, shook his huge head, and then stood between Ryan and the closest group of Scorn soldiers. Even when he was hurt and in pain, his first thought was to protect. The reinforcements got there just in time to save the eastern wall from falling down completely. A Dravari battlecruiser left its orbit and sent new troops straight into the fight. The Scorn finally gave up and retreated after being hit by a lot of firepower from above and strong resistance on the ground. That as soon as the dust settled, Ryan got to work on Rex's wounds. The plasma burns were bad, but they weren't life-threatening. Rex's advanced healing powers were already starting to fix the damage. The Vorith lay on his side in the rubble, all 4 eyes on Ryan with that familiar look of complete trust. Ryan said, "You stupid, brave, wonderful beast," and his voice broke with emotion as he treated the burns. "You could have died." Rex growled and pushed his huge head against Ryan's chest. Soldiers from both species were starting to look at the damage and help the wounded around them. But a lot of them stopped to watch the human doctor take care of the alien war beast that had just saved them all. The Battle of Sentinel changed everything that came after it. The Scorn's electromagnetic attack had damaged every handler implant on the base, and the results had been a perfect, if sad, experiment. The Voriths, which were controlled by implants, had turned into dangerous, wild animals that hurt 8 Dravari handlers and killed 2 before they could be stopped. Rex, the only Vorith who had a natural bond with his partner, fought with more skill, intelligence, and loyalty than any implant system had ever been able to do. 1 week later, Commander Krall, who had fought in the battle and seen Rex's performance for himself, stood in front of the Dravari High Council. He spoke with the weight of a lifetime of experience and a new sense of purpose. "I was wrong," he said simply. "For 40 years I thought the implant was the only way to deal with Voriths. The Battle of Sentinel showed that belief was wrong in the most dramatic way possible. When we needed them most, our implant-controlled Voriths let us down. The one Vorith that I trusted and cared about fought with more discipline and loyalty than any beast I've ever commanded." The High Council agreed to start a transition program by a vote of all members. The Dravari would slowly stop using the neural control implants over the next 5 years and replace them with a new way of training based on Ryan's method. The Dravari asked human behavioral scientists and veterinary experts to help them make the program. This was the first time they had ever asked another species for help with their most important military technology. Dr. Karath Ven was in charge of the scientific side of the transition. Her research led to new information that changed how the galaxy saw the Vorith species. Voriths were one of the smartest non-humanoid species ever recorded, but the implant made them less intelligent. They could learn complicated commands, work together to solve problems, and even develop what could only be called personalities. Each Vorith was different, with its own likes and dislikes, strange habits, and emotional ranges that the implant had always kept hidden. "We didn't make better weapons," Karath told a conference of scientists from all over the galaxy. "We found partners. The Voriths were never just things to be used. They were smart beings who were waiting for someone to treat them that way. And it took a human, a species we thought was primitive, to show us what we had been doing wrong for 3,000 years. The effect on the whole galaxy was just as big. Other species that used similar control technologies on their pets started to wonder if what they were doing was right. The Centron Collective thought again about how they used neural dampeners on their hive creatures. The Zephyrian Empire thought about their chemical conditioning programs again. The story of a human field medic and a dying war beast was making civilizations face uncomfortable truths about how they treated the creatures that worked for them. Every major military and scientific organization in the galaxy wanted to hire Ryan. Ambassadors tried to win him over. Research foundations gave out unlimited amounts of money. But Ryan said no to all of them. He had never wanted to be famous or have power in politics. He worked as a medic in the field. He was a lifesaver, and that's what he wanted to keep doing. He did agree to one job though. Someone had to lead the effort to switch existing implant-controlled Voriths to natural bonds in the new Vorith rehabilitation program. It took a lot of time and effort, and the people who did it needed to be patient, caring, and have a deep understanding of trauma that went beyond just medical knowledge. A lot of the older Voriths had lived their whole lives under electronic control. It was like teaching someone who had been blind their whole life to see when you helped them find their own intelligence and make real connections. Ryan worked hard on the project with the same stubbornness that had driven him to save Rex on the battlefield. He hired Tommy Brooks, who had learned a lot about how Vorith acted while Rex was getting better. He hired Sarah Mitchell to come up with medical guidelines for surgery to remove implants. He also taught a growing group of people and Dravari handlers how to build trust-based relationships. Ryan stood on a hill 18 months after the Battle of Sentinel and looked down at the first Vorith rehabilitation sanctuary on the Dravari homeworld. Dozens of Voriths were roaming freely across open grasslands for the first time in their lives below him. Some were carefully looking around their surroundings, sniffing plants they didn't know and feeling the ground beneath their paws. Some Voriths with implant controls were playing, which was something that had never been seen before. They were chasing each other around with a joy that was contagious to watch. Rex was always there next to him. The huge war beast had gotten even bigger since he got better. His armored hide now had the scars of the Battle of Sentinel on it, like medals of honor. Ryan could only describe the way his 4 red eyes looked at the sanctuary as satisfaction. Commander Krall walked over and stood next to them. The old warrior turned out to be an unexpected ally and, in the end, a friend. He had quit the military to focus on the rehabilitation program, bringing decades of Vorith knowledge to Ryan's compassion-based approach. "When I first saw you with that dying creature on Karath Prime," Kral said, his gravelly voice carrying a warmth that would have been impossible a year ago, "I thought you were a fool. A soft, emotional person getting in the way of things you didn't understand. And now?" Ryan asked with a small smile. "Now I think you were the bravest fool I've ever met. The galaxy is better off because of it." Ryan reached up and scratched Rex behind one of his huge horns. This made him purr deeply and vibrate, which always made Ryan feel warm. "Commander, I didn't do anything out of the ordinary. I saw a living thing that needed help and didn't want to leave," Kral replied softly, "and that is exactly what makes people so terrifyingly amazing." Ryan and Rex sat on the hillside that night and watched the freed Vorith settle in for the night as the sun set over the sanctuary and painted the sky in shades of amber and gold. Some of them had already started to get to know their new friends, both Dravari and human. Some people were still learning to trust and were still healing from years of being held back. But they were all alive and free, and for the first time, their real intelligence and emotional depth were on display. Ryan's communicator buzzed with a message from Captain Santos, who had been promoted to colonel and was now in charge of expanding the rehabilitation program to other Dravari military bases. Tomorrow, a new group of Voriths would arrive. They had been saved from a breeding facility that was using old implant technology. They would need to see a doctor, be handled gently, and most importantly, have patience. "Are you ready for another batch of impossible cases?" Ryan asked Rex. The Vorith raised his huge head, and in the fading light, those 4 red eyes glowed warmly. He huffed once, which meant yes, and then he pressed his armored head against Ryan's shoulder. They watched the stars come out together, a person and a war beast, not because of technology or control, but because of the simple, strong power of love. It turned out that the oldest tool in a galaxy full of ancient civilizations with technology beyond human imagination was the most revolutionary one: the desire to care. The galaxy had always used technology to measure power. The more advanced the systems, the faster the ships, and the bigger the weapons, the more powerful the civilization. But a human field medic with a basic medical kit and a strong desire to not let a dying creature suffer alone showed that the greatest power isn't technology at all. It's kindness. The Dravari had spent 3,000 years building systems to control their war beasts, never once thinking that trust might work better than chains. It took a human, a species that the galaxy still thought was primitive, to show them that the strongest bonds aren't made by control. People earn them by being nice. In the end, the measure of any civilization isn't how well it controls the creatures beneath it, but how well it cares for those who can't speak for themselves. That's what humanity taught the stars.